The movie begins with Grace walking on the street. She narrates that her brother used to believe she had a guardian angel, and she believed in nothing, but now she's not so sure. Just then, a nun approaches, aiming a gun at her. Following this, the scene shifts back in time where Grace is working as an eye doctor. She performs an eye examination on an elderly woman and recommends the case to her senior, John. Later that evening, she's at home emailing her patient when suddenly the room plunges into darkness. Investigating outside, she discovers a bloodstain on her brother's photograph and glimpses a nun in the mirror who vanishes instantly. Then her phone rings abruptly. Answering it, Detective Harris delivers the news of her brother Michael's demise at a Scottish convent. The following day, Grace arrives in Scotland, where Harris reveals that Father Carroll, visiting from Rome, was discovered slain in the chapel with his body mutilated. Michael's corpse was found nearby, suggesting he perpetrated the acts before ending his own life. Refuting the notion of her brother's culpability, Grace questions his involvement with such an extremist faction. At the convent, Mother Superior discloses that prior to Michael's descent, he was adored by all. Probing further, Grace learns from Mother Superior that it was a demonic entity, not her brother, responsible for Father Carroll's demise. Despite Michael's resilience, he tragically succumbed while battling the malevolent force. Growing uneasy with the conversation about her brother, Grace insists on visiting the site of his demise. While Harris guides her, Grace notices a nun nearby but ignores her. Harris tells her that Michael's body was discovered on the rocks below. Afterward, she visits Michael's corpse, which causes her to burst into tears. In a haunting moment, Michael's apparition appears behind her, warning of danger, triggering a childhood memory of seeking refuge during a storm. Regaining consciousness, Grace finds herself in the hospital, encountering Father Romero, dispatched from the Vatican following the tragedy. Later, Grace revisits the site and witnesses a nun jumping from the cliffs, followed by others. Overwhelmed, she faints, plunging into the sea, only to awaken abruptly within the convent. Skeptical of concealed evidence, Grace confronts Mother Superior, citing inconsistencies in their accounts. Mother Superior probes, questioning the basis of Grace's suspicions, and explains their disciplined existence, inviting Grace to join their meal. Reluctantly, Grace acquiesces, prompting Mother Superior to remark on Grace's divergence from her brother's descriptions and express regret over her lack of religious devotion. At that moment, Father Romero enters and Grace demands answers. Romero details the chapel's history, dating back to the 12th century, and its significance as a beacon of faith. He discusses the Knights of the Morning Star and rumors of dark forces lingering from the past. Referring to the confessional, Romero illustrates how returning crusaders sought absolution through penance. Grace interjects, noting their fatal fall, to which Romero invokes divine intervention. Romero expresses concern over the lack of transparency, tarnishing the church's reputation. He resolves to reconsecrate the chapel, emphasizing the necessity of truth for a sacred service. Subsequently, Father Romero presents Grace with her brother's possessions, urging her to share any pertinent discoveries. As Grace examines Michael's diary, she discovers cryptic entries and recalls their shared trauma. Startled by a nun's reflection in the mirror, she investigates further. Meanwhile, discussions among Mother Superior and her peers about Grace's visions is overheard. Delving deeper into the diary, Grace uncovers the darkness masquerading as a miracle and recalls her fervent prayers during her father's ordeal. Startled by a nun's distress, Grace investigates, encountering Meg, who reveals her sanctuary for dark thoughts. Meg confides her fears of moral corruption, prompting Grace to reassure her and offer assistance. Grace contacts John, divulging Michael's demise and her precarious mental state. Questioning the link between grief and hallucinations, John explains the complexities of mourning and its psychological toll. Ending the call, Mother Superior probes Grace's experiences, suggesting they are memories from her past and future. As Grace departs, Mother Superior hints at the unfolding battle between good and evil. Meanwhile, Harris interrogates Mother Superior, who justifies her actions, claiming to have cleansed Michael's body due to infestation. Harris accuses her of deceit, warning of potential legal repercussions. Mother Superior defends her actions, citing a divine struggle between God and Satan. Grace contemplates a painting, prompting Father Romero to reflect on temptation's shadowy presence. Confirming his examination of Michael's belongings, Grace corrects Romero's interpretation of the diary's language, revealing its childhood code. In a poignant moment, she revisits the diary, reflecting on their shared trauma and the darkness that ensued. In a flashback, Grace recalls her father's abusive behavior and how he locked them in a cage. As her father takes her out, she tosses a key for her mother, and she escapes. Her father takes note of this, and amidst the chaos, Grace strives to free her brother. Suddenly, they hear their mother scream, and as Grace rushes to the window, she witnesses the horrifying sight of her father killing her mother. He angrily returns home, searching for Grace and blaming her for the tragedy. Fearing for her safety, Grace hides under the bed, but suddenly, someone attacks her father, and he falls in front of her. Back in the present, Father Romero is preparing for the consecration when Grace informs him that Michael discovered the convent's attempt to adopt them when they were young. While she has no memory of it, she believes it's what drew him here. Now in a flashback, we see that Father Jacob and Sister Diane from Mount Saviour Convent had come to adopt them. While on the road, Father Jacob stops the car midway and throws Michael out, taking Grace with them. He tries to render Grace unconscious, but during this, they meet with an accident. Later, Grace reads some books, and a nun provides her with another one, mentioning that Father Romero recommended it, and Grace is shocked to see that the book is written in the same code language. Now as Grace is leaving, she sees a door open. She goes down to a basement, where she has visions of her brother being tortured to divulge information about the relic. When he remains silent, Mother Superior orders for him to be taken to the ruins, stating it's time for him to make peace with God. However, Michael retaliates by stabbing Father. Following this, Sister Matilda arrives with a knife in hand and attempts to stab her. However, an unseen force intervenes and controls Matilda to stab herself instead. The scene shifts to Grace with Harris, who inquires about what has been happening. Grace responds, asserting that she knows why they killed Michael. Harris points out the pattern of people around her dying, and that the nun who died was an eyewitness to her brother's murder. She explains that Michael was pursuing a missing, powerful relic, and they killed him because he refused to help them find it, and now she believes they are using her for the same purpose. After this, Mother Superior and Grace are imprisoned. Later, Harris informs Grace that Father Romero called, and a nun has come forward, claiming to have witnessed everything and confirming Grace's account. Grace talks to her dad before going back, where he tells her that he took her in and tried to love her as his own, and it was hard because she is the devil's own. He kept her in a cage so she won't hurt anyone. He tells her that he died in that storm. She called on someone that night, but it was not God that answered, and the darkness took him. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Grace returns to the convent, and she asks if anyone knows where Father Romero is, but gets no response. She then goes to Meg and asks her about Father Romero, but Meg replies, Mother said she would be their downfall. Then Sister Beth moves to attack Grace, but some unseen force stops her, and Meg runs away in fear. Grace runs after Meg to stop her, but Meg comes to her secret hideout and says that Mother thinks she is weak, but God's gift fills her with strength to do his bidding, so she will not let her take her. Meg cuts her hand with a knife, and Grace tries to help her, but Meg says she can feel the sin leaving her. Then suddenly, Meg comes to her senses and gets scared after seeing her own blood, and she begs Grace to don't let her die. In a startling moment, Grace sees herself covered in blood in the mirror, and as Meg dies, Grace is left believing it's happening because of her. She returns to the convent, and as Father Romero approaches her, she asks him to stay away. She says that her father was right, that there is something wrong with her. Meg is dead, and she has seen it before, and she couldn't stop it. In response, Father Romero reassures her that she is not cursed, but blessed. He encourages her to dispel the darkness and embrace the light. He then asks her to join their sermon, and she shall be absolved. All the nuns pick her up and start moving forward with her. During this, Father Romero prays to Michael Archangel to thrust Satan down to hell with those other wicked spirits that wander through the world for the ruin of souls. After this, all the nuns put Grace down, and Father Romero asks her if she admits to her sins and seeks to be cleansed by the Holy Spirit. Grace does so, and with Father Romero's permission, she steps into a tomb. And in a flashback, it is shown that she had been confined there before. Father Romero orders the crypt to be sealed, praying to God to let her dwell once again and bring the weight of heaven upon the tomb. Suddenly, something drips onto Father Romero's hand, and when he looks up, a crucifix falls and pierces his back. Witnessing this, the nuns become frightened. Meanwhile, Grace emerges from the tomb, questioning if it was all a plan to bury her alive. Father Romero then claims she is the darkness that proves the light, explaining that her hatred for God is why she lost touch with her brother. He suggests she seeks forgiveness from him. Meanwhile, Harris reaches the convent looking for Grace, but she had come to those ruins to apologize, and for every sin she has committed, she keeps moving one step back. However, Harris arrives and asks her not to do this. Grace says it's the only way before jumping. In another flashback, flashback, it's unveiled that she was the one who visited her house that night. The reflection in the mirror, the savior who rendered her father unconscious, and the cause of the car accident. The disclosure reveals that the unseen force protecting Grace from harm was none other than Grace herself. She was also accountable for the crucifix falling on Father Romero, while Mother Superior, Sister Beth, and Sister Matilda attempt to persuade Michael to jump from the chapel. Grace arrives to apologize for forsaking him in the darkness and concealing her true identity. She assures him she can rescue him, but he insists he must do this and trusts that God will catch him. Consequently, he jumps from the chapel. The following day, it's disclosed that Grace's body is missing. Harris once again interrogates Mother Superior, inquiring how what activities at the convent could push someone like Grace to end their life. We then witness that Grace has returned to London, and John notifies her that he saw her patient who was supposed to lose vision. To their astonishment, the patient's eyes were perfectly fine. The film ends with recalling the opening scene where Mother Superior aims a gun at Grace, but she is abruptly struck and killed by a cab. Inside the cab is an angel bobblehead, which is viewed just as Grace talks about having had a guardian angel since she was a kid. And we now know the guardian angel is Grace herself as a time-traveling demon nun who leads Mother Superior into the street to be hit by the cab. And with that, the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for amazing videos. See you in the next one.